Everything you know about Sparta is a carefully constructed lie. The Hollywood version, and even the video game version, is a sanitized fantasy.
Listen, there is nothing sanitized about my fantasies.
When we think of Sparta, we picture Gerard Butler's glistening abs in 300, or maybe we see Cassandra parkouring across Laconia in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. We see heroes.
Beguiling Cassandra.
You need help, and probably scrubbing. The reality of ancient Sparta wasn't just tough, it was brutal, oppressive, and frankly terrifying society. It was a culture built on mass slavery, state-sponsored murder, and the systematic destruction of the individual.
Oh, it's gonna be a royalist's wet dream.
Today, we're pulling back the...
Foreskin!
Nope. We're pulling back the red cloak and revealing why the truth about Sparta is infinitely darker than fiction. Where does this idealized image come from? Take Zack Snyder's 300, based on Frank Miller's graphic novel. It's a visual masterpiece. It's thrilling. It's also, historically speaking, absolute nonsense. The creators were open about this. Director Zack Snyder called it an opera, not a documentary. They explicitly chose to exaggerate history to solidify a heroic image. Then you have Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's a gorgeous game, and it gets a lot right about the look of ancient Greece. But it still presents Sparta through a modern lens. You play as a Mystios, a mercenary with incredible freedom of choice and morality.
And thighs. Thighs. Thighs that could turn acorns into butter and Colin into cream.
That concept, individual freedom, is the exact opposite of what Sparta was about. Real Spartans weren't adventurers. They were cogs in a state-owned machine. In historical Sparta, dissent had no place to hide. Pop culture loves the idea of the Spartan warrior, but it ignores the reality of the Spartan state. To make them palatable heroes, they have to erase the brutality, and that brutality started at birth. Sparta was obsessed with maintaining a strong, able-bodied populace. This led to a ruthless practice of eugenics.
Sweet dreams are made of this.
The Eurythmics, the 80s synth band, but close.
Well, what are eugenics then?
Eugenics is broadly defined as the use of selective breeding to improve the human race.
Oh, you mean that horrible thing that the did to the
Yep.
Oh, and also the did to the
Yes.
And even now they do horrible things to the
Exactly. Unfortunately, those who don't learn history are forced to repeat it. 300 shows this dramatically, with infants deemed unfit thrown off a cliff. Historically, infanticide was practiced. Unfit babies were typically abandoned on a hillside to die of exposure. The state dictated who was worthy of life. If you survived inspection, your life belonged to the state. At age 7, you were taken from your family and thrown into the Agoge, a compulsory state-sponsored indoctrination program. This wasn't school. It was a systematic attempt to break your mind and rebuild you as a perfect, obedient killer. The conditions were horrific. You trained barefoot. From age 12, you got 1 cloak per year. That's it. You slept on beds made of reeds you had to rip out of the riverbank with your bare hands. And they deliberately starved you. Rations were meager, and this led to one of the most famous aspects of the Agoge, stealing. Boys were encouraged to steal food, but if you were caught, you were savagely beaten. Not because stealing was wrong, but because getting caught was wrong. They weren't teaching morality. They were teaching stealth and survival through deprivation.
Stealing from the poor to survive because the regime keeps you poor? Well, that's free market capitalism for you.
The entire system was designed to strip away individuality. Your loyalty was not to your family, but to the state. The goal was to create what historians call a programmed mind and a walking symbol of state power.
The Spartans exhibited devotion where their needs were nothing in comparison to the state. It's like a cult, and you wouldn't get cults like that happening now.
There's not a day that goes by that we don't think about him.
In 300, Leonidas' final rite of passage is this epic solitary hunt to kill a giant wolf in the snow. It's very heroic. But the real Spartan rite of passage was far more sinister. And to understand it, we need to talk about the dirty secret underpinning the entire Spartan system. This is the part 300 completely ignores and Assassin's Creed barely acknowledges. Spartan society was rigidly stratified. At the top, you have the Spartiates, the full citizens. They were a tiny minority. The vast majority were the Helots. The Helots were fellow Greeks, conquered and enslaved by Sparta generations earlier. They were the engine of the Spartan economy. They farmed the land, cooked the food, and did every scrap of manual labor. The Spartiates' ability to train full-time was only possible because they brutally exploited this massive slave population.
Behind every great ancient civilization is a castigated and enslaved population doing the real work. Just like me in these videos.
The Spartans were vastly outnumbered by the Helots, and because of that, they lived in constant, paralyzing fear of an uprising. Their solution? State-sponsored terrorism. They humiliated the Helots regularly, forcing them into debilitating drunkenness and public humiliation.
Oh, sounds like spring break in Cancun. Spring break! Spring break!
But the worst part was the Cryptia. When Spartan boys in the Agoge showed leadership potential, they were recruited to the Cryptia, essentially a teenage secret police force. Their mission? Terrorize the Helots. They would sneak out at night, armed with knives, and murder any Helots they found. They specifically targeted the strongest, the ones most likely to lead a rebellion. Let that sink in. The historical Spartan rite of passage wasn't killing a wolf. It was murdering unarmed slaves in cold blood. This was how they trained young Spartans in evasion and kept the slave population terrified. When 300 portrays Spartans as fighting for freedom against tyranny, it's deeply ironic. They were perhaps the least free society in Greece, and certainly the most tyrannical towards their own population. Hollywood sanitized this dark and appalling tradition because it makes the Spartans look far less glorious.
Tyrannical, oppressive state with a murderous class of warrior leaders, oppressing the vastly outnumbered populace. Oh, reminds me of my family holidays. Mother would take us all over. Pyongyang, Baghdad, Liberia, Manchester. Mother loved vacationing with a strong leader and a fearsome civic justice department. Happy days.
Life in Sparta wasn't just brutal for the Helots. Even for the elite Spartiates, it was austere, rigid, and bizarre. While Athens was focusing on arts, learning, and philosophy, Sparta was fundamentally centered on a warrior culture. For a Spartan male, the singular permissible occupation was soldier.
Well, at least it'd make careers day easy. What does your dad do? Spartan warrior. What does your dad do? Spartan warrior. Yours? Interpretive dance instructor. Just joking, Spartan warrior.
They ate communally in messes called syssitia. Their famous meal was black soup, made of pork, blood, salt, and vinegar. It was notoriously disgusting to outsiders. Spartans didn't even live in comfortable homes. They lived in military barracks, well into adulthood. Even after they married, they spent most of their time with their fellow soldiers. Husbands often had to sneak away at night just to see their wives.
Why did they want to go and see their wives at night?
Let me whisper it to you.
Ooh,
It was a society characterized by extreme austerity and rigorous discipline. The comfortable lives depicted in the film were accessible only to a tiny fraction of the people living in Sparta. Okay, let's talk about the fighting. This is perhaps the most visually obvious difference between reality and the myth. In 300, Spartans fight practically naked.
Naked fighting is never a good idea. Think of the chafing and the unexpected stiffness. I will never live down that night of Twister in the dorm room.
Historically, real Spartan soldiers wore heavy armor, including large bronze helmets, breastplates, and ankle guards. They were ancient tanks. So why the change? Frank Miller admitted he removed the armor for aesthetic reasons, stating, "I wanted these guys to move, and I wanted them to look good." But the biggest difference is how they fought. The way 300 depicts warfare, Spartans charging alone, breaking formation, engaging in epic one-on-one duels, it's exciting, but it's precisely how you would lose an ancient battle. Spartan strength came from one thing, the phalanx.
Thanks for that, as you were saying.
The phalanx was a close, deep formation where the army operated as a unified unit. Your shield protected the man to your left. A core principle was that no one soldier was considered superior to another within the unit. Breaking formation would have rendered them significantly weaker. The phalanx was the physical embodiment of their culture, individuality crushed for the sake of the collective machine. The film notably leaves out the hoplite style of fighting for more dynamic action scenes. And finally, the Battle of Thermopylae,
The final boss battle.
the event that cemented the legend. 300 gets the basics right. It was a real battle in 480 BCE. Leonidas led the defense, and the narrow pass was crucial, but the details are wildly exaggerated. First, the Persians. 300 depicts them as monstrous, disfigured entities, including giants and fantasy creatures. The elite immortals look like ninja warriors with horrific faces. Historically, the Persian army was diverse, but they were not monsters. Xerxes was a normal-sized man with a beard, not a 9-foot-tall god king. This portrayal drew heavy criticism for othering the enemy to create a simplistic good versus evil narrative.
Really? Did we think this was real? Ninja beasts and giants in battle against the brave, morally superior Spartan warriors? You don't even get this set level of partisan journalism from the Fox network.
Second, the numbers. The movie implies only 300 Spartans fought. Historically, Leonidas led approximately 7,000 Greek soldiers to the pass. When the Greeks were betrayed by Ephialtes and flanked, Leonidas ordered most of the army to retreat. He remained with his 300 Spartans, but they weren't alone. Around 700 hoplites from Thespiae and 1,100 Boeotians, along with some Helots, also fought and died in that last stand. It was a profound sacrifice, but the movie minimizes the contributions of the other Greeks to maximize the Spartan glory. It also completely ignores the crucial simultaneous naval battle fought by the Athenian fleet, which ultimately saved Greece after the Spartans were defeated.
They claimed victory, but forget that the majority of the fighting was done by others, and their part was actually quite minimal. Sounds like Hollywood's treatment of the Second World War.
So why does the myth persist? Why do we prefer the 300 version over the reality of the Cryptia, the heavy armor, and the brutal slave state? Because the myth is simpler and more appealing. The idea of extreme discipline, martial prowess, and heroic sacrifice is compelling. Films like 300 and games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey tap into that fascination. But we should never confuse that fantasy with the historical reality. The real Sparta was not a society of glorious, altruistic heroes. It was an oppressive, highly prejudiced, and brutal military state. It was a system that engineered soldiers through childhood trauma and sustained itself through the terrorization of a massive enslaved population.
A society highly motivated by the industrial military complex. Make Sparta great again.
The Spartans were formidable. They were legendary, but they were also deeply flawed. And the truth, as always, is far more interesting and far more brutal than the fiction. What historical myth do you want to see us tackle next? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more deep dives into the realities of the past.
Oh, I'm more confused than ever now. My love for Cassandra is conflicting with my hatred of the Spartans. Oh, why do my fantasies always end up in a sticky mess? Comment below on what you would like to see from Uncomplicated Explains in the upcoming episodes. Please like, comment and subscribe.